This video has been requested by many learners, so let me share the secret to instant speaking confidence. Now, this will be helpful for you whether you are an English learner, like most of the people who watch my channel, or people who just feel nervous in any kind of public speaking situation. So I think you're really going to enjoy this video. Well, I want to talk just a little bit very quickly about the background of this. This is something I taught to a friend of mine many years ago. He's a Japanese guy and he was learning English and I was learning Japanese. We were kind of helping each other, but he had a pretty big problem with confidence. So he knew quite a lot, but he was always worried about speaking and he wanted to know what to do about that. So this is what I was teaching him. And this is actually, I just kind of drew this on a piece of paper, what I'm going to show to you right now. Now, the first part of becoming a confident speaker, before we even get to how you feel and expressing yourself, I want to explain something very important about learning and then actually how you speak. Because as you see, I've got two different charts here because these really are two different things. So let me explain why. So the first one, we're going to call this knowledge. I'm just going to abbreviate this as know. So this is the information you know, and we get this by, we're just going to title this focus over here. So focus, and then we've got time down here. So the information you know is kind of a product of what you focus on and then how much time you spend doing that. Now, I don't call this just study versus time because a lot of people can spend actually a lot of time studying but not really have a lot of practical knowledge and certainly not knowledge for everyday conversations. So many people will study a lot. They'll spend a lot of time reading textbooks and listening to, just listening practice lessons, other things like that that are giving them lots more information, but they're not necessarily becoming more confident speakers or even learning a lot more about how to speak in an everyday situation. So the first part of this is focus, and I want to really get you to change the way you think about this. So it's not like a kind of typical chart where you have your knowledge increases as you spend more time. Because again, some people, they can spend actually a lot of time and they don't really focus on things that actually help you. So they might be down here. So they've got a lot of time spent learning the language, but because of what they focus on, they don't have a lot of practical knowledge for good communication in everyday situations. So these are people who might know a lot for passing a test, but they just don't know a lot of conversational speech for, again, everyday conversations. So another interesting thing about this chart here about developing knowledge is that when you're trying to think about what to focus on, it's actually kind of a clever thing to do. You can spend a lot less time, but focus on the right things and become able to just have good conversations and at least know the vocabulary that natives are using in everyday situations without spending a lot of time. So again, there are different ways to learn. This video is not about specific ways to learn faster or more efficiently. I've got lots of videos about that on my channel, but this one specifically is about confidence. So again, we've got the first chart here, which is knowledge. Sound like Ty Lopez, knowledge. Have you seen that video? I love that video. Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Anyway, so we're going to talk about knowledge, but I also want to talk about over here, we've got speaking. We're going to just abbreviate this as speaking ability. So the reason these are two different charts here is because these are related, but they're independent. And this means that you could know a lot, but not be a good speaker. And a lot of the people who watch my channel are like that. So maybe you can understand what I'm saying right now, but you can't communicate automatically because you know a lot, but again, you lack maybe the confidence to speak. You're worried about your pronunciation or you're worried about making mistakes. There are lots of reasons why this happens, but this video is about correcting that. I know people want me to get to the point right quick, but it's important to understand this, why a lot of people might know information, but they don't have good speaking ability. Now, speaking ability is actually a pretty interesting thing. We're going to label this confidence over here because that's really what your ability is, your ability to speak. And then you've got your knowledge down here. I'm going to abbreviate this again as knowledge. Knowledge. Anyway, So we've got confidence up here and what you know. Now this is really interesting because your confidence is actually what limits your ability to speak. And just like this graph, you can see we have someone who spends a lot of time but doesn't know enough about actual conversational English to have a good conversation. So they don't understand slang and idioms and other things that people use in everyday situations. So they struggle to speak. They don't even have the knowledge. And so in this case, they've got maybe just a low level of knowledge in general. And so maybe that person would be, again, you could just like put them up here where they have even like a high level of knowledge or a low level of knowledge. Again, this is like from 0 and going up this way. So up here, maybe you've got a lot of knowledge, or down here you have not much knowledge at all, but we have this really low because you have very low confidence. So what you'll see here is that even if you know a lot, like you could be up here, you could have spend the right amount of time where you're learning very efficiently, studying only the things that are most required for conversations and not spending a lot of time practicing things that you just won't hear in conversations. So you're doing that, learning very efficiently. So you might know a lot, but again, you're stuck down here because of your confidence. So the question becomes, how do we raise this up that way? So again, this level right here, we call this kind of the confidence ceiling for your ability to speak. So you can only go this high and it doesn't matter. You can keep learning more and more and more and more. But if you don't raise this, then it doesn't matter. You won't become a more confident speaker. And this is what I see a lot of students doing. They're continuing to learn more. They study more. They put more and more time into learning, but they're not able to increase their confidence. And this is just a part of the cycle of developing a habit. So as you're learning, I'll draw one more kind of small chart over here. You've got kind of improvement over here, and then confidence builds from that. And when you get more confident, you want to improve. And so we call this a virtuous cycle, a virtuous cycle. So virtuous meaning positive, and it's a virtuous cycle. So what happens to a lot of people is that they don't practice, so they don't feel good and they don't make improvement. And we call this a vicious cycle, a vicious cycle. So you want the virtuous cycle of you're able to boost your confidence a little bit, you practice a little bit more, and so this goes up. And ideally, you want to be up here. So you want to improve, you have a lot of knowledge, and you have a high level of confidence as well. And so this is where your speaking ability is really good. So as an example, if I'm trying to learn a different language, you can actually tell some people who don't know very much at all, but just because they're so confident, they might be over here. So you see this is really interesting. You can have almost a different profile for different kinds of learners. Some people are highly confident, but they don't know much about the language. And so a friend of mine out here in Japan, he might say konnichiwa or something, like pronouncing it badly, saying that to everyone and have a lot of confidence about that, but he can't really have a good conversation. So he's got a low level of knowledge, but a high level of confidence. And actually, these people are often envied by those who know a lot, but don't have the confidence to speak. So finally, we get to the point here. How do we raise this to up here? So we want to boost this. And the really fantastic thing about what I'm going to tell you right now is that you can actually improve your confidence basically instantly just by understanding one thing, and you don't need to learn any more words or phrases to do it. So even without learning anything new, you can take the information you already know to improve your confidence, and that will improve your speaking ability. Does that sound good? Okay. So all we're going to do, it's a very simple idea, is to remember your value. Remember your value. Make sure you can see that over here. This is incredibly important, and we're going to look at 2 examples of this because this is mostly what people are interested in. The first one is public speaking. I'll just abbreviate that as PS. And the second one is just personal communication. I'll abbreviate that one as well. So we've got public speaking and then personal communication as well. Now, in the case of public speaking, let's say you feel very, very nervous about giving a talk or even a presentation just like this on YouTube. You're nervous about making videos. Really what's happening is you're forgetting the knowledge that you have, the value that you have that you can share with other people. So in my case, let's say I think I have something incredibly important to share. So I believe this is a really important idea that you need to know about. But if I'm too nervous, then I won't be able to share that knowledge with you. So I have to remember the value I give, and by remembering the value, I increase the confidence I have to deliver that value. I'll give you an even more basic example of this, but imagine someone who's not really a good swimmer. So they're not very confident about their ability to swim, but they're walking by a pool and they see a young child. The young child has fallen into the pool and they're splashing around. Now, most people, they would very quickly rush in. Maybe they have their phone or their wallet or something like that, but they dive in to try to save the child. So they believe the value they have, the value they bring to the child is more important than whatever they think about their ability to swim. Now, most people, again, it's a pretty common thing that they would have that situation and they would believe that idea, but you can apply that same idea to just regular conversations or regularly delivering value in an everyday way. So in my situation, actually, if you go back to the very beginning of this channel nearly 10 years ago, wow, it's been a long time. So nearly 10 years producing videos to help people, and hopefully these have been valuable for you. I think they have been. Do let me know. Do click that like button if this video has been valuable and you have enjoyed the content, and actually share it with 2 other people as well. But when I began making videos, you'll notice they were not, videos of me in the camera. And part of the reason for that is that I was shy. I was actually shy about getting in front of the camera, and I was worried, okay, what if I look silly or something like that? And again, it's because I was not thinking about the value I could give. And in my case, as a person who's helping others learn languages, it's important actually to see my face. So when you're seeing how I move my mouth, how I move my body, my expressions, all of these things are what produce my fluent speech. And so you can watch that a lot more easily if you can see my face rather than just seeing some words or something on the screen. So when I thought about that idea, I said, I can actually provide a lot more value, and my value actually goes up. So I have a lot of knowledge to share about how to help people get fluent, but I needed to increase my value. So I had to think about what's the value I provide to people. And certainly as someone in a public speaking environment, if you have knowledge to share, it's a bad thing to not share that. So when you remember that idea, again, to remember your value, it means to think about how you can help people and why it's important that you communicate the knowledge that you have. So this is for public speakers, whether you're, speaking English as a native speaker or as a learner, but anybody who has to make some kind of presentation, whether it's at work or some family thing or something else, remember the value that you give. People are most interested in the value, the information you can provide if you're teaching something, rather than maybe what you look like, or if you make a mistake or you have a funny haircut or something like that. Anyway, the second part of this is for personal communication. And this is really more for people who are especially trying to learn a second language, like most of the people learning English watching my channel here. They're thinking about personal communication, and this becomes a big problem for people because oftentimes they have a lot of knowledge, but they think they don't provide much value, especially if they can't speak. So we get back to this vicious cycle of people worried. So they're worried about their speaking, or they think they'll be boring, or that they don't have anything to share, or the conversation will just end very quickly. There are lots of reasons for people worrying about this, but again, because of that, they don't want to speak. And so they worry more, they don't speak, they worry more, they don't speak. And so again, it's that vicious cycle. We want you to have a virtuous cycle where you practice a little bit more, you get better, you feel more confident, you speak more, and that's how you increase this. So you move up here. Does that make sense? So what you have to do in your situation, let's say you are someone who has a lot of knowledge, but you're really, really nervous about speaking. Really, the first step is just to get in conversations, and here's the key. You raise your value, you raise your confidence by remembering your value. You remember that even just listening is incredibly valuable. I want you to think about that for a moment, because as a language learner, we talk a lot about speaking and how we can improve our conversational ability and learn more vocabulary, things like that. But just like when you're communicating with people in your native language, you still have to listen. And most people don't feel listened to in often just everyday life and conversations, that kind of thing. When they're speaking with other people, they feel like most people are just listening, waiting for their turn to speak, but not really listening to the other person. So if you feel like you're really being listened to, people are really understanding you, then that's a very valuable thing. So people really like being listened to. And so even if you know a lot, but you can't speak a lot, the point first is just to get into conversations. So tell people, hey, as an example, I heard you were having a problem with something. Would you like to talk about it? So just asking people, is there something I can do to help? And really, you're just trying to listen. The point is, again, to stimulate, to create, to begin this virtuous cycle of let me get into a conversation, and then suddenly I'm feeling a little bit more confident about that. So it begins with just a mental switch. Wait a minute. If I get into a conversation, and even if I don't speak more than a few words, that's valuable for the other person. Remember that. That's valuable. So in the same way that a person who's teaching or trying to share something, again, it could be a business situation, or like you're at a church or some community event, something like that. You're trying to share information to be valuable to other people. So whether it's public speaking or personal communication, even if you can't speak very much, even if you don't know, you begin this virtuous cycle by just entering conversations, and you do that just really by listening and sharing that moment with other people. I know when you're thinking about how do I improve my language learning ability, most of the channels and videos you'll find on YouTube will just give you more of this information over here. They're going to continue to grow your knowledge, but this doesn't matter if you can't improve your confidence. So you have to break this vicious cycle of stopping yourself from speaking. So you don't spend time trying to learn more. You can actually stop learning. You can not learn another word, but still become a much better speaker by becoming confident about the things you know already. So it begins, especially if you don't have much ability, have much speaking ability. If you have a lot of knowledge, you can listen to people, and that's how you begin. So when you're in conversations with people, don't worry about making mistakes. Just think about listening to the other people. Think about being valuable, and remember your value, and that will help you become a much more confident speaker. So again, hopefully you've appreciated this. If you have, do click that like button and share it with other people you know who also struggle with their communication, especially because they lack the confidence to speak. Well, that's been it for me. I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. Really think about this idea. You really can instantly improve your confidence if you just remember your value, and this drives the virtuous cycle, so you can destroy the vicious cycle that keeps you learning, but that doesn't help you become a more confident speaker. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Do again, click that like button if you have, and do these 3 simple things right now if you'd like to become a more confident speaker. 1. Click on this link to subscribe to my YouTube channel for over 500 free videos. 2. Click on this link to download my #1 ebook guide to fast fluency free. And 3. Click here to watch the most popular video on English fluency here on YouTube.